All right, folks. So let's take a look at the types of questions that you can add to your form or your quiz. First of all, we've already talked a little bit about the multiple choice question and the fact that you've got multiple options. One of those multiple options will be correct. You'll set that in the answer key, and you can see right here that this green check indicates the one that's correct. However, there is only one option, so that's something to think about when you're choosing the type of question. Let's add another question here, and I'm going to change this one to short answer. Now, in this case, you can use a short answer question to be graded automatically, but it has to be very clear. So if I make a question like, what mythical creature looked like a horse with wings? Well, we know that the answer to that is going to be Pegasus. However, it's entirely possible that a student might have a misspelling, might not capitalize it. So there are a number of things that could go wrong here. So, and especially with things like math notation, you want to make sure that you are setting it up so even if they answer it a little differently than you might have wanted, it still could be correct. So it's really important to make sure that if you want it to grade on its own, then you have to give some options for how it could be marked as correct. So that's something to think about. I'm going to add one more here. Pegasus. I don't know, sauce. So mark all other answers incorrect. So if it's not one of these, it's going to be incorrect. Again, you can change the point value, and now we are done. That's your short answer question. Those are the only things that'll be marked correct. Otherwise, you may want to make it so that it will have to be graded later on. So we've got that one. We'll add another question. You've got your paragraph. Paragraph, I'm not going to spend much time on because if you add a paragraph question, it will definitely have to be something that's graded by you at a later time. So you won't be able to give that immediate feedback if you include a paragraph question in your quiz. So I'm going to leave that one alone. You'll see the responses. You'll have to grade those individually and then return the grades to the kids. But check boxes is a different type of question. So we'll go ahead and add a checkbox question. Checkbox is, let's see, we'll do flowers can be, we'll say pink, sure. Yellow, sure. Silver, maybe not. And red. All right. Now, because this is a checkboxes question, we'll be able to go to the answer key, and instead of just choosing one of these answers, I'll be able to choose several answers that are correct. And they'll have to choose all three of those correct answers to get this question right. So I can add some feedback to this if I want to, so that if they get it right, for correct answers, I can add some feedback. For incorrect answers, I can add some feedback. Great job. You got this problem. Way to go. Stuff like that. But we'll mark that as done. These are the correct answers, and they need to make sure they hit all of those answers in order for it to be correct. Let's add another question. We'll come down here and look for drop down. The really cool strength of the drop down question is that you can do something like, what state are you from? And because it's drop down, you can do Alabama, Arkansas. I'm not sure what what the first few are, but you get the idea. If you've got 50 states and you don't want to have those all as check boxes or all as multiple choice, then a drop down makes a lot of sense for something like that. And you may have other situations where there are just a lot to choose from, and using a drop down makes that very sensible. So let's add another type of question. And we'll come down here to the linear scale. I find that the linear scale is really strong for things like rate your understanding of adding fractions. And we can choose for a 1 to be unsure and a 5 to be um, rock solid. And that way, students can give you a real feel for what they're, and you can adjust these if you want to. Maybe it's 1 to 10. And that gives you a feel for what is their understanding of something that you are trying to measure or a concept that you're measuring. That's another one that's great to use. Might not be good for a quiz, but it's a good one for if you're doing a formative assessment and you want to know how the kids are doing. Add another one here. We'll come down. And these ones are a little bit different. Date and time are only for adding a date or adding a time. It's very simple, and I'm not going to go into those. But these ones are a little tricky. So multiple choice grid. If I choose a multiple choice grid, then here's what I'm looking at. This is typically something you would use if you had a quiz that maybe you used in the days that you were only using paper. Maybe you've got a quiz from then and it's a multiple choice quiz. Well, you can choose to plug that quiz in maybe as an image for the students, and then they can come down here and in the rows, this would be question 1. And for columns, we can start to do so A, B, C, and D. That way, these are your options for those multiple choice questions. And these are question 1, question 2, and so on. So if I do question 3 here, then based on the image that shows up here that I put in for the question, they're going to answer these 3 questions with A, B, C, or D. And in order to illustrate that, I'm going to go ahead, and we do have an answer key here. We'd want to make sure that we do B, C, B, or D for that, and set the point value for each question. But when you look at it, let's take a peek here, and you can see, come down here and oh, here we go. So if I have an image up here and I can mark my responses like so based on the image that I have up above. So that's what we're going to be looking for. Again, for the drop down, you've got your states. I didn't put them all in, of course. The check boxes that you'd want to make sure you check all of them that apply. Your rating on how you feel about fractions, and your multiple choice right here. Can only choose one of these. So let's go back. And again, I must have had a different thing selected here. I'm going to add another question. Um, again, see image above. And we're going to make this one multiple, or the checkbox grid, which is basically the same thing, except they may have to mark more than one answer for each of the questions that you put in. So A, B, C, or D, and those could be any or all. So I'm going to go to the answer key, and this one will be A, B, and C. This one will be D and C. Done. And now we can, again, we'll preview. And all the way down here, we've got our grid questions. One thing you're noticing probably is that this is mixing up the questions. And that's because I have it set so that as a default, it'll shuffle the question order. So we have this one right here that I can check multiple things and see how I did. So that's what it looks like. And those are the different types of questions that you might want to put into your form. Hopefully you'll be able to add the things that you need to make your form exactly what you're looking for.